Hey everybody, I'm Jeff with the Embroidery Nerd. I'm joined here by Justin Armenta from JA Digitizing Studios. And we're very excited because we have a special guest today, and it's not Justin Armenta from JA Digitizing Studios.
No.
She is off screen right now. We have the author of the book Punch, Bonnie Nielsen. She's and let me think. My brain just went plain, Justin. I'll let you introduce her.
So she is a industry veteran that has worked with big name companies like Madeira, ZSK, and right now she's with Amann, the Amann Group, and the author of Punch. And that's why we have her here today. Talk a little bit about the book, how she came about writing the book, and everything that she's done in the industry. I had the opportunity to teach with her this past January in Long Beach at the Impressions show. Um, as long as I've been in the industry, just listening to her knowledge and her techniques and stuff, I was even learning a lot from her. So pretty excited to talk to her today.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and bring her in. Welcome, Bonnie.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the nice introduction.
Yes, Justin did a good job. I forgot.
Yes.
He always does a good job. So, well, I guess let's start off with the book because, you wrote a book and that is not an easy thing to do at all. So how about you tell us how, why did you write a book? I guess.
Okay. Well, when it came, I've always written for magazines also in the US when I lived in the States. And then I left in December 1999, came to Germany. And I got a job and working for this company that was making GIS base pack. And I was writing articles for the German magazines. They would just have somebody translate them. And then the publisher of the magazine kept getting questions of, why didn't she write a book? Could we have a book? And so the very first book, it's no longer being published anymore, was actually made when I was working for GIS. And that came out in German. And that's why I ended up writing a book, because they had asked for it. That book was, they had two, what do you call it? They printed it twice, and it completely sold out each time. But when it came to the English book, I wanted to not be connected so closely to somebody else. I'd like to have my own book and not really, because I had worked for that company, they kind of owned the book. So I basically didn't want it also so based on one software. I wanted to have just basic information that was for everybody and not just that. The book has in it, of course, all the stuff that I've ever worked with. At the time, I was only working mostly with ZSK, a little bit of Baradin. But I had never really worked on a Tajima until I came to Amann. And also the fact that in the book, it's very heavily with Madeira threads, but I had worked so long for Madeira, and it was just natural to use their products because I was working for them. And now 15 years later, since the book has been out, I no longer work for Madeira, but then had an opportunity to come to Amann, and I took the chance to change. And it's been a very interesting 8 years or so by Amann. I've learned different things here than I would have if I had stayed at Madeira, put it that way.
Okay.
Technical information about thread in general and stuff like that.
Okay.
So that's why I wrote the book.
Okay. Well, I have a follow-up question for you. Let's talk about the cover.
Yeah. But my very first book, they didn't want something so crazy, and so this was my book, and I thought, okay, I wanted a design that would reflect my particular punch styles, which are very open, playful, colorful most of the time. And not the standard, just a logo on the front of the book. I wanted to show people that there are other things in the industry, another way of punching. Okay, I'm an artist. I studied painting and had in college had really studied art. I've always studied art all through school anyways, but this is a natural talent which I have, and I've used embroidery as an expression, as my medium, basically.
Okay.
But yeah, there was one woman that once asked me, is that a self-portrait? And I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, but I don't really think it's a self-portrait as much as it was just exercising, these kinds of stitches and stuff.
Something fun and creative.
Yeah, some
Okay.
that
I think
not
that's what I
every
think
day.
that's what kind of sets this book apart from what you see out there as far as the industry education. Um, just kind of thumbing through it yesterday when I got it. There's definitely some technical explanation in it, which I think everybody needs to know. But also, it's not just real basic. Here's a run stitch. Here's a fill stitch. It's kind of getting into the creative side of things and kind of making you look at digitizing in a different way.
Hmm.
Opening your horizons on what type of techniques that you can use to really get through to the artistic side of digitizing, which I really enjoy.
Yes,
Um,
and that's the thing. I mean, people don't realize that all stitches are born from your basic three: your running stitch, your satin stitch, and your fill stitch. Okay, because I started back when when this wasn't really even computerized. It was computerized to some degree, but we had those paper tapes and all that stuff, and you had to draw every stitch in by hand. I would probably be able to do if it had stayed like that. I would never had like this Maryland design behind me. I would have never probably gone in that direction because I wouldn't have been able to manipulate it so easily as I am now. But what people don't understand is that you only need three basic stitch types, and if you manipulate them enough with the abilities of your software in these, what you can do with those three basics, then you can make all kinds of crazy things. You don't need a special software that says, oh, I have to have that specific stitch or something like this. This is most of my work is with the three basics. I don't use anything that is, oh, you have to have this software because it does this special thing. It's pretty basic stuff that I do. I try to stay with the basics, I think, because it's challenging to always create them in another way.
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest thing when just being the educational direction that the group is in. A lot of times you'll see specific questions to specific software. That
Yes,
that user's using that software, therefore they want to know how to do it.
yes,
But kind of like you said, you and I are both from the old school way of
yes,
digitizing. Before they had, even before they had the on-screen digitizing like they have now, and a lot of the fancy
right.
tools and stuff. So learning the theory and not so much software based, it can be applied to anything, any software that you have.
That's right. That's right. And this is what I tried to do in the book. I tried to stay away from things that was only one software could do. I don't know. I mean, Jeff knows because he works on a lot of softwares, what one can do and what can't do. um, I'm not. I mean, I did some production punching. I've worked in all areas of embroidery, from starting out in the punch house and then eventually going to ZSK, and then helping sell punch systems and having to demonstrate the stuff, having to train people on the software, to actually working for another company there. Cirque, it was the biggest promotional company in the 1990s, and my job there was to create anything that looked cool with these people's logos, just so we got the account. Not that anybody actually did the stuff that I embroidered, but they figured if they can do that, then you can all do the little stuff also. So that showed me there at that job I had really free range, and I went to New York quite often in different places and found different materials to work with for appliques and this and that. And then some of this stuff is in the book. I was able to use some of those old embroideries to just show people that you're not limited. You're only in your imagination where you're limited, um, as far as creativity goes. Um, the book itself, I really try to document the basics of embroidery, because this is something that is disappearing in the industry. A lot of people that are my age or even older, probably some have already died, I don't know, or they're getting close to, but this information is not really documented anywhere. And there are lots of embroidery books out there, and I looked at some before I wrote my book just to get an idea of how somebody else went about it. And what I wanted to stay away from was all about me, and also the fact that what I wanted to say, I don't want it all about a business, how to make a business, or that kind of stuff. I wanted to have the pure essence of what happens in embroidery, regardless if you have a software which is full automatic, things happen on that machine where people stand there and just shake their heads thinking, now what? And I think this is something that people who are coming into the industry, they buy their software, they get the machine, or they might get a puncher that's punching for them. And then they start having problems, and then they start looking, where is the problem? And thank God that you guys have this embroidery nerd group. See, there's a lot of things being posted there where lots of people can then write, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And I think it's fun to be a part of a group, or to get to know you guys and be a part of a group where this information can be shared. It's not about making money. The book was never about, oh, I want to be rich or something like this. You don't get rich writing a book like this. I mean, if you're a crime writer or an author of novels or something, maybe you do, but not in this field. So yeah, it was just that the information will not die, and I was happy that I was being supported by so many here in Germany in order to write the book.
All right. Well, I'm going to we have a couple of people that have joined us.
It's
we
early.
have Bob joining us from Central Minnesota.
Mhm.
And we have Miss Cindy King joining us from Texas.
Oh, great.
And we have, if my screen's going to scroll right, Britta here from ZSK.
Mhm.
Hello from Germany. If you guys have any questions for Bonnie, or you would like to know any more about it, please drop your questions in the comments, and we'll do our best to bring them up. So now I have another question for you, Bonnie.
Okay.
Going through your book, there's a lot of really good information in there. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about it is, I read it 5 to 8 years ago, picked it up and I read it again, and I'm still learning from it. But when you look at it, there's a lot of information. What do you think is the most important information? Like, if you could peg a chapter or a specific topic that you talk about in the book, what do you think is the most important thing that it conveys in there?
I didn't realize this until probably the last few years. It has to do with stitch directions. That's on page 86, I think, and then the complex fill chapter. I thought, all this time, I thought, well, people know what they're doing. They put their stuff in and they have their stitch directions. And I thought that this was never a huge topic. And now I'm seeing that this is really a pet peeve of mine, because I get stuff in here from all over the world, because our facilities are in India. We have a lot of contact with lots of clients. And I'm really see where people struggle. They struggle with stitch directions, not putting them in so that the software will calculate clean enough. Either they put too many in, or they let it generate it automatically. And then what happens is the stitches are not sitting, stitch directions are not sitting maybe at the right angles. And so people get embroideries that look a little bit rough or not really clean, and they don't know why. It's usually because of this. And also, we spoke about this, Jeff, about the fact that with these complex fills, or these filling programs that these new softwares now have, like this automatic close point connection thing, and people aren't thinking about where they might start a fill or end a fill. And these two chapters, I think, are probably the core point of really good embroidery. And I've seen that there are differences in calculations of softwares, how it calculates a shape, especially a complex shape, say in a filling. And if they don't pay attention to where they start, or just kind of click on the outline and the computer decides or the software decides, then you might get some unnecessary stitching in there that really doesn't do any good for anybody except, adds more stitches. So these for me were very, I think now when I think back, those are the two main chapters where I think people really should take a look at it and really think about these things as they're learning to punch or are punching. And the book was never meant as a book that, oh, you read this book and you can punch. It won't work like that because software changes so drastically, and how somebody might input something changes every year or every 3 or 4 years, and the book would have been, thousands of pages long. I can't write a book like that. And so the book is mostly, for me, is a book where you're having problems or you want to make sure, are you doing it correctly? Then you can at least see how I did it. I mean, what can I say? If you find a better way or you think you've got something better, then, this is okay for me. But this is everything that's in the book is everything that I ever learned, and everything that I ever, how do I want to put it? You might learn some things from people, but it's also this whole thing of trial and error. You start over again. It's like, okay, again and again and again. And this is very hard for people who are coming into the industry. And when they start realizing it's more than just scanning or importing a vector line and then boom, it's done, then they start to see where the problems are. And so this book is actually made for that kind of group, somebody who's starting to punch or getting more into it, or an intermediate puncher. Or maybe it's also for experienced punchers. I mean, they also like the book because it either justifies how they've been doing it, or the stuff in the back is kind of interesting maybe for them.
That's one of the things that, it truly stands out, I think, as unique to your book is it was published in 2010, so
Yeah,
approximately 15 years ago. And
that's
the
right.
information's still very relevant. It's not, it didn't get outdated. It's still very much, there's products in there that I think companies stopped making for a little while, and then they started making them again. And so now you
Yes,
can utilize those techniques.
I think that really leads to, the relatively new technology of auto-digitizing, which just makes me cringe every time I see a design that I can see that it's been auto-digitized. But
yes,
a lot of times, like you said, it's, I think, that mentality of, oh, it's just a click, there it is, it's done, looks good on screen. But when you really look into the specifics, like you cover in the book, it's just as simple as stitch directions in a satin stitch, um,
And
allowing the
sequencing.
computer, yeah, in sequencing, yeah, the allowing the computer to choose all this stuff. Yes, it will sew. Yes, it will work. But is it going to look good? Is it going to be a quality design? And that's where, just the knowledge in this book
right,
and the techniques really kind of
right.
stand apart from just auto digitizing.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, this is something that when I came to Germany, I noticed that the softwares were really getting into this auto-digitizing stuff. Uh, yeah, I mean, it has maybe its place, but not in my world, really.
Mhm.
And maybe also not for others. But if you really want to be a professional and you really want to learn specific things, or if people wonder why my work looks a certain way, then it's because of what I wrote in the book. I mean, I didn't really hold back really on anything. I even wrote about a little bit about my style. My style has evolved over the last 15 years. It'll probably always evolve because I'm never satisfied. I want a new look, or I just want something a little bit different. But it's not that I'm against full embroidered designs or something like this. I mean, it also has its place. I just don't like embroideries. For me, when they're like these big full jacket backs and it's just a wall of thread, I can't breathe when I look at it. And I think that's my problem. It's just this, my stuff comes from painting, actually. These techniques and how I blend colors or how I do certain things are coming from the painting what I learned way back. And I've just tried to apply it somehow to embroidery. So it has, maybe the embroidery has a little bit of a painter's look, or yeah. Yeah, it's just the way it is. I try not to look at shapes as, how can I put this? People get graphics, and if they have no imagination, or if they do not feel free to do so, then if it's got a blue background, they'll fill it blue, and then they put everything on top. And I'm a little bit disappointed myself over the years that embroidery never really, maybe it's starting to come now, but over the years it was very stale. It's people had their graphics and people interpreted the graphics, but it wasn't like evolving in a sense, different styles or whatever. And I mean, there are people out there, but maybe it's just not accepted. I have no idea. Maybe my work is not always accepted. I don't expect that everybody likes what I do, but most of the people are at least very interested in how I do it.
Right. Okay. I'm going to grab a couple of comments here. We have John joining us from Fort Collins, and DJ Kev says, I have had the Punch book since last year. Great book. Great read and info. I've applied your techniques to different thread thickness. Yes, I'm on thread. Text 40 is my favorite now.
Okay, great. That would be happy for my company to hear such a thing. Yes.
And then he follows that up with, in my case, it teaches you to unlearn, it teaches you to unlearn, to learn again, and to think differently than when first started.
Okay, that's an interesting comment. Yes, yeah, maybe to relearn if you've learned bad habits, didn't know what you're doing, and just trying your best to get through, and then you learn that there is another way. Yeah, I think that's quite interesting that he wrote that. And about the threads which are in the book, you can do this with anybody's threads. You don't have to just use Madeira. At that time, I only had Madeira, but Amann, we also have many different kinds of threads that you can stick on the embroidery machine. And so you're not, just because I wrote about something doesn't mean that you have to use that thread. So it's just showing you techniques. And at that time, you need thread in order to embroider this stuff. So that's why that's in there, because I was working for them. Yeah, I mean, I just never thought I'd leave the company because of my age. I'd never thought I'd get another job, because, once you're over 50 something, people don't really want to hire you. But I was lucky that for the last 8 years I've been working here. So,
Awesome.
And I've learned a lot. Yeah.
So, what was the hardest part about writing a book?
Well, I'm not a very good writer. I'm very good at probably organize what it is I want to write. I have some difficulties, but really trying to make it, how do you want to say, clear enough for people to understand what the heck I was trying to get across. That was very hard. And I remember long discussions with my husband because he helped try to fix some chapters. It was always like, okay, we got to get out the boxing gloves, because I was thinking, why don't you understand it? I thought it was so clear, but obviously, maybe I'm already in on the subject, so it's very hard sometimes to step back and see how somebody who probably doesn't know as much as you, how would they read that? You know what I mean? It was I think for me that was the hardest part, was to make it understandable enough that people at least got the idea of what I was talking about.
So one question I had, because I've always wondered this. You speak both English and German, and the book came out in both English and German, right?
Hmm.
So I guess my question is, what language did you write it in, and then was it translated to the other?
Well, definitely English. I wrote it in because I can't write German very good, and German is a very hard language. I'm not talented at all in languages. Um, so it came out in English, and then Dieter Haug, the man, my husband here, he translated this into German, but he did not translate it from sentence to sentence. He actually read the chapters and then would rewrite it so that it really made sense in German. And actually, this German book, which is now the same, has same cover, everything. I was at a show here this year in Stuttgart, at this exhibition, and I had this year there were people coming up to me actually saying, I've had your book for a while. When I first read it, I didn't really understand it, but boy, now I really understand it. And whoever wrote this in German, it's really good. And so, I mean, Dieter, he worked in the industry for many years. He used to do the software for the base pack, and so he knows the topics of what I'm speaking about, and so he was able to really write this in a way that was very understandable for the Germans
That's really
or
good.
German speaking people, because I mean it's sold in Austria and also in where is it, Switzerland. People have the book wherever anybody can speak German. They bought the German book.
That's really impressive because I think it would be really hard to write it in one language, but writing it in two different languages is quite the feat. Especially if they were understanding what they were writing when they did it. Because I've met a lot of people that, you have software developers that program that don't really understand embroidery, and you have people that write that don't really understand embroidery. So for him to be able to both program and write is really impressive on the in German too, because
Yeah, I mean, well, he is German, and if he didn't understand something or it wasn't clear enough, then we'd have to sit down and we'd have to talk about it. But we weren't putting on the boxing gloves like with the first book. It was
yeah,
a little bit easier, because then we could really discuss, okay, this is what I mean, this is how I want it. I would like to get this across, and then he was much able to help me with that. And the German book, I mean, he did a fantastic job. I only get good compliments on that book. And plus, it's the second book that you actually publish. So any things that were wrong in the first book, or little tiny things that really upset me in the first book, I was able to kind of fix it. It was more not that it had anything to do with the actual chapters in the book. It was actually in the beginning of the book, because when we did the English book, it said in my biography that because I did work for Chanel O'Keefe, right? Is this the name? Yeah, basketball player. And it said he was a baseball player, but it was just because when you take a book and you write it, then you have to it's when this has to go through some sort of software and it kind of crams it together. And I don't know, probably somebody who was doing the corrective thing, we just didn't see it. And it came out that he was a baseball player. And I was like, oh God, how many books? But, that's that's what happens. I mean, it's not easy to write a book. And there are a lot of things I probably would change now, but okay, it is what it is what they say now, huh? That's a
in the
saying now.
second version of the book, right? There's
Yeah.
going to be a sequel.
Yeah, there's no more sequel. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
No, that's no. Maybe ebooks might be interesting, but an actual book where, I mean, I think people don't understand. I never really understand it. I thought, okay, you write something, you put your pictures together, you go to the publisher, they do everything. But there's a lot behind it, I mean, getting the right resolution of the pictures, so that they look good in the book, all this stuff, and rereading that this at least sounds good. There's no misspellings and all that stuff. But it's also, it costs money to print and to make all this stuff. And then you've got the shipping, and then you've got the what do you call it, the marketing, all that stuff. And that costs money, And so if people find the book expensive, I'm happy that you guys are selling it for $60 and not $100 and something, because this book was not made to just make money off from it. It was made to get the information out there, and get people to a level where they could have at least some success in their embroidery. Because I know how hard it was when I started, and how frustrated I was. I still get frustrated because the fabric keeps changing. That's our worst enemy. And of course, the sizes of designs that people want.
All right, I'm going to run through some comments here because we have quite a few coming in. Cindy says, everyone has their own style. It sounds like anyone can learn something very important from your book. For me, I mainly stitch corporate logos. I'm looking forward to ordering your book. Mm-hmm. We have Blue Daniel the Lion saying hello from Indiana.
Ah,
I'm going to
great.
catch as many of these as I can.
Mm-hmm.
The scroll on my screen is not good. Blue Dan the Lion asks, can you talk about your creative process a little bit?
Oh boy. Yeah, like when I have to, or when I want to create something new, if I have an idea, when I came to Amann, we started doing portraits only because I was looking at like Marilyn Monroe designs one day. I always go through the internet and look at stuff, and then there are like different things that I find that inspire me, and then I start either redrawing it to some degree, or I actually put that picture behind there, but not really copying the picture, but using it as inspiration. And so I do a lot of research. I even watch things about, if I'm doing portraits, I read about the person, or I watch at least documentaries about them. What she went through as a person and stuff. I don't know if this really reflects in my work so much, but it just gives me an idea of who this person is that I'm trying to make some sort of creative thing out of. For me, it's not always what can I say? It's not always the actual image at the end. It's the process in which I go through to punch it, which I find fun. I'm so heavily involved in the process of thinking how it could look in stitching, or I know how it will kind of look in stitching. And I'm really exhausted when I'm done punching things like the Marilyn Monroe, or my other one, which was the Jimi Hendrix. I really got tired at one point, and I kind of gave up, and then had to go back months later and really redo him because I wasn't satisfied with some sections. But my process is basically experimenting with many times different kinds of stitching, or I kind of like destroy it in the sense, like Marilyn, which is behind me, that has a lot of zigzags, and it's just basically a running stitch that I use, and then I add like a swing, and then I can do like irregular, that it's not the same length. These are just things which are in the EPC, which I use, the software I use from ZSK, and I just manipulate it to the point where it's unrecognizable what it is. And then I start overlapping colors. And sometimes I have to run to the embroidery machine and maybe just stitch up a small section and then come back if I'm totally not sure of something. So, it's not like I just sit there and just do it and bam, it's great in the end. It's a lot of back and forth, testing something maybe on the machine because I'm just excited about a look. Will it work or not? And so that's kind of my process, that I take these basic stitch types, even like even like a complex fill. I don't don't use the normal settings. I really open up the fill really wide so that that stitch distance is extremely wide. I might even throw like a micro or a pattern in that fill, but it's so with the stitch distance so far apart that nobody knows exactly what I did. They know that it looks irregular, but they don't know what I did because you can't identify it. And
So
so,
I
yeah.
think something really important to pick out of there that is an extremely valuable lesson for anybody is Justin's been doing this a really long time. You've been doing it for a shorter amount of time than Justin. I'm just kidding, Justin. I like to tease you. But I picked up something you said there is, you said I'm testing it on the machine, I'm going back and forth, right? A lot of people I think right now when they get into embroidery, they think it has to be perfect and it has to work the first time. You do your first sew out and
Yeah.
that's it. And it's not really that way. A lot of times when you're trying to do something creative or you're even learning, you have to do a sew out, see what went wrong, make an adjustment. And as you get better at this and you do it more and more often, you learn from those mistakes and maybe you don't make as many and it doesn't take as long the next time. But
Right.
it's still a process.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. Everybody is so worried about something being perfect. I gave up on that a long time ago. Because I still have things today that you would think it would only take me about half an hour to do, and I'm like 2 hours on the thing because it's something there, or because of the fabrics or sizes or whatever. Plus, I get interrupted sometimes, so I can't get my stuff done. But when it comes to my creative process, anyways, it's a lot of just testing. I run it, and people, they might be watching me or they'll see that I'll just trash a whole design. I just delete the whole thing and start over. And they're like, how can you do that? You've been working. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's my end product is what matters to me, not the time it takes me to do it. That if it takes me longer, at least that I know if it took me longer to punch it, I mean, I probably take more time to punch a logo than most people nowadays because I want to make sure I want to control everything as far as the stitching is concerned. Yes, the software makes it quick and stuff, does make it a little bit faster, but um, I don't want to ever have to go back to a design. If especially logos or something, I try to make sure that I take my time, make sure that I think this is going to be fine. Run it. Most of the time, it works. Might be one or two adjustments, but things like the Marilyn, this creative process, this takes a long time. I mean, or takes a while, and that's how we got into this. I mean, they saw the Marilyn, and it was kind of like, oh, now we could do more portraits. So I've just been doing portraits the last, I don't know, 5-6 years. Every couple of years or every now and then comes up another one. I mean, I just did for ZSK for the Long Beach show. The James Dean. There I'd like to go back in and work on them a little bit more, but I was under a little bit of pressure. So
Yeah. Time commitment thing.
yeah.
Britta says, Bonnie's book was the first thing I got handed over from ZSK on my day one in the embroidery world. Back then, I got inspired right away, and I'm so happy to have learned so much from Bonnie in all those years.
Oh, thank you, Britta. Yes, yes. Yeah, she's been kind of somebody I've taken a little bit under my wing, I guess, over here.
And then Blue Dandelion says, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing.
Great. Yeah, I mean, it's embroidery touches a lot of people's lives, and once you're in and you're really into it, then yeah, you make friends, and it's a nice world. I find the embroidery. It's small, as it's not as big as some industries, but yeah, it's
So,
been an
what's your
interesting.
favorite
Mhm.
pieces you've ever created?
I would say the Marilyn, the Jimi Hendrix, and also my Michael Jordan. That one is probably the last ones that I've created. I think are some of my most favorites. Um, I don't know. I think it's because my work is now evolving to another point. When I look back at some of my earlier stuff, I think, oh God. But I guess that happens with anybody who's somewhat creative or worked on things. And then you look back at your first, I mean, I still, at home, I still have my very first painting I ever did. And I
Wow.
kept it because I wanted to know where I came from. Um, I even have even one sew out of my very first embroidery that was in this kind of in this direction. I still have that, and I still have the data to that.
Wow.
And it's really crazy to see where you start out and where you end, and the stuff that you've done in between. I don't like everything I ever did, but I would say now these three portraits that I did are probably some of my favorites. The other thing that I really liked that I did for this motorcycle group there in this village where I live, I did their. It had the big eagle on the back, and I was able to use a really cool fabric for the bird itself, because their bird was just a basic, cold kind of cut graphic. It wasn't one where it had like, beautiful feathers or something in it. And so I was just trying to bring this to another level. And when I got done with their stuff, they were like, this is nothing like our artwork. And I thought, oh God, they're going to reject it all. But that wasn't the case. They were really happy that it came out in this way. So,
Okay. So, if you had advice for somebody that they went out and they bought their first machine and they've never done in the industry, they bought a machine, bought the software, what advice would you have for somebody that's trying to learn the craft?
well, if they've got a machine, of course, they want to start running it. So I would suggest that before you waste too much time in earning money, hire a good puncher. You guys from Embroidery Nerds, I mean, either from yourselves, I would suggest that they go to you guys or anybody that is they feel or found out in the industry that is doing good punching. And then what I would do is then stand at my machine and watch how it stitches up. What are these people doing first? What are they doing second? How are they doing their color sequences? How many trims? If they're good punchers, then you can learn from that already. And then as you start to punch yourself, you take that knowledge of what you gathered at the machine, and if you have the book, then you can start, slowly doing your own stuff. But yes, I've always basically told somebody, if you buy a machine and you want to get that thing running, that you better find a good puncher first. And you can just look at their work and see how they went about it. That's
I think
basically what
that's
they did to me in the very beginning. I sat on a machine, I don't know how many months before I even started drawing for embroidery. I was just running the machines. So,
I think that kind of sets the difference between digitizer skill level is if they've been on a machine before.
yeah,
I think you have to be on a machine. You have to see how designs run um,
yes,
to get the full grasp on how the translation from artwork to stitches and
that's right.
how the fabric affects it, and then even the thickness of the thread affects it. Kind of going back to what DJ Kev said, um, just being years and years and years of the monotony of corporate logos that I've digitized. My background is a lot of production,
Hmm.
and you get to see the local companies or the local sports teams, the local schools and whatnot. But just kind of expanding the knowledge of these specialty type techniques. When I got into 3D puff, when I first got into it, it was like kind of like what's this all about? Then you start getting into it, you start succeeding at different things, and you start pushing the limits. Kind of like I kind of see
Hmm.
your work with different type of threads. The class in Long Beach in January, the kind of the theme overall, it was with me, myself, Bonnie, Joe Kramer, and Eric Campbell. Was just kind of this overlying theme of mascots and how to approach them in different ways and different threads. And
Mm-hmm.
just taking my love for 3D puff, I got into different threads and the text 40 threads and see how they affect the process, and just the
Yeah.
trial and error of actually
Yeah.
mixing different
That's
threads with
right.
3D.
Yeah.
It was something that I hadn't experienced before, and I'm starting to love it as well.
Well, the funny thing is, you guys really flashed me there at that place. I mean, every time you guys, if I was just thinking, wow, I mean, where have I been? I mean, when I saw your stuff, I was really very impressed and happy that you guys, I mean, both you and Jeff, some of the photos that I've seen of these 3D puff, it's like finally it's reaching another level, you know? It's not just a satin stitch, it's something on top. Or, yeah, the way you guys went about it, I was really quite flashed about it. I thought,
I
wow.
I, I
Yeah.
felt the same way with Bonnie was really showing these using the really thinner threads that are available out there and the techniques of digitizing these micro letters. I had Eric Campbell sitting to my right, and every time he showed a sample, I'd look at him. I'm like, "Are you serious?" And he just kind of nod his head, and looking at these teeny tiny letters, and you could actually read these things. It was like amazing, and it's like the
Yeah,
same thing I
that's,
wouldn't.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just also another world. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, you have the big world of embroidery and the small world of embroidery. And Amann, they have with their Seraphyl Fine, I've done stuff with that thread that I never could do with some of the other company threads that I've used in the past. And this crispiness and this, yeah, kind of like really super fine detail, I'm able to get with the Seraphyl Fine. And it's like the big world and the little world, they all share the same things, you know? I mean, like if you, in both worlds, you probably have police, you have fire people, you've got, you know, hospitals, all this kind of stuff. But when it comes, you know, so you can kind of think about that in embroidery. You have your needle thread, you have your stitches and your stitch directions, blah, blah, blah. But it's just getting smaller and smaller. So there are some things that you have to pay very close attention to. This is not in my book because at that point when I wrote the book, I didn't even know about these thin threads. They weren't available, I don't think, at that time. But it doesn't really matter. It's just the fact that you just have to be aware of what scale you're working with, and then once you got the hang of it, then it's kind of like the big world. I sent you the design. Did you take a look at it? The state seal. I
Yep.
sent
Hmm.
you. Yeah. So you can kind of see how I went about it. It's like if I would have done it in the big world, but it's just very small, very, very small in some sections.
Very, very small. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, that class, I think, was the one that you four put on was absolutely amazing. The fact that more people didn't show up for it, they really missed out. And hopefully, you guys do it again next year.
Hmm.
I think it would be amazing. I mean, even if you taught the exact same thing, it would be amazing just to go see it again. There was so much information in that class. I'm sure sitting through it again, you could pick back up more information that you missed the first time.
Hmm.
It was truly an amazing class. So
Yep.
I'm going to grab a few more comments.
Yep.
So Cindy says, for me, I use a digitizer most of the time. I like for the digitizer to have a little freedom or suggestions on the projects. Go
Yep. Very
down. We
good.
have
Yep.
Ramona saying, I'm sorry I'm late. I had to come in and say hello, Bonnie. It was so wonderful meeting you at Impressions. Thank you for being there.
Yep. Yes. So it was great meeting her also. Yes.
Gina says, running the machine will help you learn to listen to the sound of a good design. DJ Kev says, I would like to get that design to take a look at it. I'm very interested. And I think that catches up the majority of our questions or comments, I should say. But we'll go ahead and we'll start working on closing out a little bit. If you guys haven't noticed or you didn't pick up through the live is that we imported Bonnie's book. It is for sale on the embroiderynerd.com. I think we have it listed for $70, and I highly recommend it. There's not, how am I going to word this? There's not a lot of products that I would just grab and invest in to bring to this country and not really make money on it. Like
Yeah.
honestly, I believe in this book so much that I wanted to make it available to people in the United States, make it easier to get because the prices on Amazon were insane.
Yeah.
It's just I wanted it to be easy for something to get because the information in it is so fantastic, and I believe in the book so much. So I'm really excited that we were actually able to bring in 100 copies, and for everybody that's ordered, I know you're going to get something out of it. And those of you that are on the fence, I don't recommend products lightly, and I highly recommend this book. Cindy says, I just got mine ordered. I love having knowledge in my library. Absolutely. It is a fantastic book, and I highly recommend getting it. And not just because I'm trying to sell you a book, but know that we brought it in because we wanted to make it available. The information is very solid. And it's just it's a good book. It's probably the best one I've read on embroidery. And I think
There
that
is
everybody in
there
the
is
US
only
should have access to it.
yeah, there is only limited copies here that we have for sale, and from what I understand, there's only so much that are actually in print that are going to
Yes.
be. It's not going to be printed anymore. So
No, it's
um,
not going to be printed anymore, and we really don't have that many left, really.
yeah,
So,
so
I mean, this is a
it's
very good price for the book, I think, because I was really shocked at some of the prices which I saw on the internet, and I thought, oh God, and I'm really thankful that you guys are supporting me with this book to help me sell the last copies. That's really great. Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate that for the support.
We're happy to do it. It's a good book. I highly recommend it again. um, just there when I recommend a product, it's because I truly believe in it and investing. We heavily invested to get it here, and we're really glad that it's getting the reception that it is. And we're happy that Bonnie could join us today. She's in another country. The time zones are, I think it's what, 2, almost 3:30.
We're 6 hours ahead of you. I'm in the future, remember?
Yeah, I know you're in the future, but how far in the future?
6 hours ahead.
6 hours ahead.
And it's
So
still okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's great that she was able to take the time that Amann let her come on, because I think she is at work right now.
Yes, I am at work. Yes. But they
So
were very happy. They were very happy that, yeah, they support me here also. So it was very nice of them that I was allowed to do it on work time.
yeah,
Yes.
it's very nice that they, thank you to Amann for doing that, and thank you to Bonnie for helping us, and um, Justin showing the cover of the book. Maybe he's going to throw in words. We'll see.
if you haven't ordered it, definitely jump online. Like I said, limited copies that we have, and like Jeff said, we brought this in to make sure that we can share with the community, have it available for us in the U.S. to grab it. If you haven't gotten it yet, well worth it. Get your copy before it's too late. A lot of great information in here. Like I said earlier, like Jeff always likes to point out, I've been doing this from back in the dinosaur ages. And I'm, just thumbing through this. I got this yesterday, just thumbing through this. I'm definitely going to learn myself from this. So
Are you also getting close to retirement, Justin?
I don't think I'll ever retire.
I like to tell Justin that he started when he was carving the stitches into the rock.
Yeah. Is that how? Yeah. Gee, you might have had a better chisel than I did. Yeah.
But with that, everybody, I think we're going to go ahead and close out. I'm really thankful that Bonnie could be here. Bonnie, do you have any teaching appointments that you're going to be doing? Any travel? Anything that you want to tell anybody?
Not at the moment. No. no. But when I do travel, when I come to the States again, I definitely will let you guys know.
Okay.
But there is no plans at the moment. Most of the stuff is done. So for this year, from what I know, anyways, I
Okay.
will be doing some teachings for customers and things like this. So
Awesome. All
over.
right. Well,
Okay.
with that, everybody, I'd like to thank Bonnie Nielsen from Amann. We have Justin Armenta from JA Digitizing Studio, and I'm Jeff Fuller
Yeah.
with Fuller Embroidery Works. We are all here representing the Embroidery Nerd. We'd like to thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you very much.